On today's Apple Daily, the Apple Stuff Buyer's Guide, February 2021, Apple Pencil support for iPhones, and more pricing for Mac Pro Apple Silicon Cubes.
For the latest Apple news, rumors, and leaks, every weekday at 12 UTC, join us in the iCave.
I'm iCave Dave, and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you. If you want the latest Apple news, leaks, and rumors every weekday at 12 UTC, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring my bell so that you don't miss a thing. The Apple Stuff Buyer's Guide, February 2021. Knowing what to buy and when from Apple is something of a fine art. And of course, everyone has different needs, preferences, and wants. But there are some items that are just legitimately not a good idea to buy, either because they're due for an update soon or they're not going to have support for much longer. So the plan is to update this once a month or so to help you avoid buyer's remorse of your new device having an updated version arrive a week later. Let's start out with iPhones, as that's a pretty simple task. There's one big clue here that Apple is making quite clear. The range of iPhones across the top of the pages goes iPhone 12 Pro, 12, SE, 11 and 10R, but in the which iPhone is right for you section right below it, there's no sign of the iPhone 10R. Out of the currently available iPhone models, the 10R has the oldest silicon inside, the A12, which was released with the XS and XS Max 2. So of the current range, other than the iPhone 10R, which you really shouldn't go for, none of these are actually really a bad choice, although the 11 and the SE will get slightly shorter software support. The SE is a good choice if you prefer Touch ID over Face ID, though bear in mind if you're going to Touch ID because of masks, the next update to iOS will allow you to unlock a Face ID iPhone with a mask, assuming you have an Apple Watch. For most people, I would probably recommend the iPhone 12 Nothing. Casual users certainly won't get huge benefits from iPhone 12 Pro models in terms of the cameras, which, other than the heavier stainless steel finish, is the biggest difference, though the LiDAR autofocus is excellent on the Pro models. But things like Pro RAW and 60 frames a second HDR video will probably not make much difference to you. Now, the 10R itself could get an update to A13 and take the spot as an SE Max or Plus, possibly even replacing the current SE model so that Apple can move their whole range to the modern design with the screen and notch, but that's unconfirmed right now. It's also thought that that model could potentially have Touch ID in the power button rather than using Face ID itself, just as a cost-saving measure, but it would bring Control Center to the top of the screen instead of the bottom, which for a long time has confused me why Apple has kept Control Center at the bottom of the screen on the old style iPhones when the iPads have already moved it up to the top for everything. It just makes control much more confusing, and as someone that uses one of each, an iPhone 8 and an iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's very confusing to have to go to the bottom of the screen for Control Center on one, the top of the screen on the other. Apple tends to like things unified, and that's the kind of change that is quite possibly on the cards. iPad has a lot more to avoid right now. Last September brought announcements of the iPad Air 4th generation and the 8th generation iPad, and there's already talk of the 8th generation iPad being replaced, possibly in the next couple of months, so I'd be hesitant to recommend that one right now. In fact, from the current iPad range, I would only recommend the iPad Air 4th generation, which is a strange position to be in, but here's why. The iPad Pro 11 and 12.9 inch both got an update early in 2020, but have only really benefited from a camera update there, and the cameras aren't really used that often on an iPad compared to the iPhone. The A12Z is barely any different from the A12X in the previous 2018 model, so if you really want an iPad Pro because of ProMotion, I'd look for a good value used 2018 model right now. And used as the route I'd go for if you were looking at the base iPad 2. Rumour has it that this will be updated to almost the exact specs of the previous 3rd generation iPad, and a quick glance at eBay shows that these are selling right now for about the same price as the 8th gen iPad, but you'll benefit from starting storage at 64GB instead of 32, a larger 10.5 inch display instead of 10.2, and the display is laminated too, making it feel a lot more like you're touching the content instead of separated from it. Finally, iPad mini is due an update soon too, and is still using the A12 SoC, so I'd avoid this one just for the moment. It seems like Apple could be trying to eliminate A12 based products from their current range, and this could be because of some feature that it won't support that they want to bring in the next update. Apple Watch. This one's easy. I really think the sweet spot in Apple Watch right now is the Apple Watch SE. It has the modern design, S5 processor from the Apple Watch Series 5, and comes in at a really compelling price. The Apple Watch Series 3, however, although it's lower priced, I wouldn't call it better value, like at all. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're just looking for something to do the basics, notifications, fitness tracking, it will do fine. I was using a Series 0, the first generation ever released, until just recently when I got the SE, and it worked. It did the things that it needed to do. It wasn't a great experience to use, but it worked. The Series 3, however, has this old, smaller design with way smaller displays and much more limited face options. This makes it feel even older than it is, and it's a 4-year-old product as it is. Just as Apple will probably be wanting to go to all modern iPhone designs, I think that the watch could have the same thing coming soon, and Series 3 may not get many more years of software support. Plus, with a brand new design rumoured for 2021 and the Series 7, it seems like this one's time may be up very soon. But Series 6 versus the SE, if you want the latest and greatest features with the ECG bells and oximeter whistles, then go for the flagship. I know for many the always-on display is a big deal, although not having it has never been an issue for me with the SE. Apple TV, I'm going to say don't buy. Now, I love my Apple TV. We don't really watch anything without it going through the Apple TV. But now almost every TV on the market has smart features built in, and if they don't, there's a whole bunch of boxes out there that do pretty much the same thing for a lot less money. That being said, I do think Apple has something up their sleeves for Apple TV, but what is yet to be seen? Rumours have mentioned either an A12Z or an A14 SoC powering the next version, though Apple will need to find some big features to differentiate it from the competition. Perhaps iPhone U1 powered handoff, like with the HomePod Mini, but for video and audio, plus allowing spatial audio for AirPods Pro and Max. Adding in more controller support suggests that Apple may be pivoting to gaming focus on the Apple TV, but most of these games will be designed to play across iPhone, iPad and Mac too. And the other big rumour that everyone keeps saying is that they'll have exclusive games for these higher powered systems, but that's not how Apple operates. Anytime that a new game is brought out, it will go to everything that is supported by the current operating system. So anything that's on iOS 14 currently, if that's the current version of the operating system, anything that runs that will be able to run it. So that goes back to, right now, an iPad Air 2, it goes back to the iPhone 7 or 6S, I think. So they will not bring games that will only run on those higher processors. They will just have to reduce the quality on those. And finally, onto the Mac. Now this is super easy right now. The only Macs that I really think offer great value in February 2021 are the M1 Macs. In terms of performance versus price, the Intel models don't come close on value right now. And while I know there are still some apps that don't run on Apple Silicon, that should be fixed pretty soon. Or if those developers don't get them fixed, customers will find an alternative piece of software. For those who need access to Windows beyond what a virtual machine can do, I'd actually suggest using a remote desktop connected to a Windows dedicated machine. Windows users rarely insist that their Dell can also run macOS, so I wonder why it's such a big issue for Mac owners to have Windows. I also understand the frustrations of those people who want more ports, more displays, more screen size, but all of those things are not far away. Buying an Intel Mac at this point just seems like a mad idea, especially now we've seen how M1 Macs perform in the real world. So I think we can trust that the M1X and M2 in their time will be pretty stunning as well. We have more information about redesigned large display iMacs, 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, a redesigned thinner MacBook Air, all on the way. So with Macs, I'd say that if there is an M1 that can do what you need, go for that now, and you can sell it on when something else comes along if that's what you need instead. And if there isn't, you shouldn't have too long to wait anyway. So that wraps up the buyer's guide section. We've got a couple of iCave answers questions to move on to, but if you've got any thoughts on this buyer's guide, please let me know down in the comments, and what's on your radar for your next purchase. So into iCave answers, Suvik Mukherjee asks, this might be a far-fetched one, but I want to ask you anyway. When will we get Apple Pencil support on iPhones, at least on the Pro models? If Apple can do it on iPads, why can't they do it on iPhones? Is it just a software issue, or a lot has to be considered for Apple to be able to have Apple Pencil support? Let me know. Or is it just the case that Apple don't want to cannibalize their iPad sales by introducing that feature? Super interesting question, because there's a lot of the other phone manufacturers out there that are putting pen or pencil type support onto their phones. I don't think this has anything to do with software limitations. I don't think it's anything to do with limitations of being cannibalized, and I know in the comments after this question was posted, people were suggesting that it's because you wouldn't be able to charge it on the side and it would be a bad experience from that point of view, and that's certainly true, but Apple could easily get around that by creating, and I think I mentioned this before, a pencil case which basically acts like the AirPods case, and you can charge that via Lightning or something, keep that in your bag and just pull it out and it would wirelessly charge your pencil in your bag. So I don't think that would be a limitation if they wanted to do this. However, I think the reason they don't want to do this is it would be a terrible experience compared to using it on the iPad. The whole point of Apple Pencil is that it's for doing art and it's for taking real notes on the iPad, and it's for doing the kind of stuff that you need the precision for. And with the iPhone, that's just not going to be a great experience compared to on the iPad. Now, cannibalization within their own product line is not something that Apple cares about at all. In fact, it's one of the things that they use to make their different departments compete against each other. It's like, if we can bring this feature down from this more expensive product to this cheaper one, and we can do it within the pricing, then they will do it. And then it's up to the higher priced products to innovate more in order to keep their position. Actually worrying about different products cannibalizing each other, don't even think about that when you're thinking about Apple's philosophy for these things. It's not a consideration that they make at all. I just think that the size of the Apple Pencil is so unwieldy that it just wouldn't make sense at all on an iPhone. But I could be completely wrong. What would you want to do with it? Would you use it for taking notes, or would you use it for drawing? I just feel like the screen isn't big enough to make that practical. But let me know if I'm wrong. And Pelutra asks, don't you think that the new Mac Cube could cost around $2,500 because it fits between the Mac Mini and the Pro? Now, this is an interesting question as well, because we're saying it's going to fit between the Mini and the Pro, but the Pro might be disappearing completely. The rumours right now are that the Pro will stick with Intel chips, and we know that Intel chips are going to go away. So in the next year, pretty much, they're not going to sell Intel Macs anymore. And I have a feeling, although we've heard that they are developing a Mac Pro with Intel in the current form factor, I don't even know if that's going to be released, because I think if they can get the performance that they need in the Cube, I don't think there's going to be any reason that they would want to release an Intel version still. The only caveat to this may be if they still have some contractual obligation to release one or two more models, but I can't imagine that that's going to be something that sells well anyway. The Mac Pro already is a very, very small proportion of their sales. I think if Apple was to develop this Cube that comes in at a much more reasonable starting point, maybe around $2,000, then it is going to sell a lot better. Basically, it's going to be around about sort of iMac territory, but without the display, so they're able to put more of the money into horsepower instead of displays and stuff. But I think looking at the current pricing for the Mac Pro is not going to be a helpful thing for us at all in terms of working out what price this is going to come in at. It's going to be a lot more around what's the future for this device going to be, how long is it going to last, how upgradable is it, and we just don't know at this point. I can see that they might create these kind of system on a chip cartridges that I think we mentioned in a previous video, where you can basically unplug the whole system on a chip tray and plug a new one in to the same chassis. That could be a way that it works, almost like a PCIe style arrangement, but without having to open the whole thing up. So you literally just remove the whole chunk. That seems like the way that Apple would be likely to do it. Pricing wise, I don't know, maybe it could cost you $1,000 to replace that chunk of your central processing, and then you can keep a graphics card with it, or keep an afterburner card, or keep other, specific sound hardware that you have in there. We just don't know at this point, so it's all speculation, but I reckon around $2,000 to $2,500 is probably a reasonable shout for where it will start based on the pricing that they've seen already on the other M1s. Thank you so much for the question. And if you guys have a question too that you would like me to answer in the show, use hashtag iCaveAnswers in your comment down below. If you want a shout out at the end of the next video, make sure that you join the notification squad by subscribing, ringing the bell, and posting up hashtag notification squad in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.